Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Interesting piece. Antonin Scalia, again, getting after the Supreme Court for inventing new minorities. And he said, look, that's not our job. They just invented this new minority when they're ruling on DOMA, that now people that practice sodomy, that engage in the infamous crime against nature, they're now a new minority that are entitled to special privileges and special rights that other people don't get. We're finding out now that if you're homosexual and you're in the military, you get a 10-day pass to go off and get married. Heterosexuals don't get that. They do not get a 10-day pass to go off and get married. You do. So homosexuals are getting special rights, special treatments, not equal rights, not equal treatment, but special rights and special treatment. And Antonin Scalia said, look, that's not our job. It's not our job to be out there creating new minorities, inventing new minorities. That is the job for the Constitution and for Congress. Now, this is an interesting piece here on Salon.com, because you and I have been saying for some time, we tried to be delicate about it for as long as we could, that the president is misleading us, that he is exaggerating, that he is distorting. And we were trying to get around making the flat-out statement that President Obama is lying to us. We finally stopped doing that. We're not finessing it any longer. The President of the United States is lying to us. He told us there's no domestic spying program. Then we discover within the same week that according to the Inspector General of the NSA has violated our privacy on no less than 2,776 occasions in the last year alone. In other words, there is a domestic spying program. Now, here's the interesting thing. David Sirota is the one that wrote this piece. It's on Salon. And here's the heading of his piece. What if the president lied to us? Now, this guy's a liberal. This guy's uber winger left. What if the president lied to us? And the subheading, so many of President Obama's statements about NSA have been wrong, but he's too smart not to understand the truth. Now, let me read just a little bit, and I'll cycle back to the implications of that subtitle. With the latest major revelation about National Security Agency surveillance, there's a huge taboo question that needs to be put out on the table. Has President Obama been deliberately lying about the NSA, or have his statements just been repeatedly wrong? And he goes on later in the piece, once the L word comes out, the lie word comes out, it means the official in question is deliberately misleading the public, and that is rightly considered an abhorrent act in a democracy. Now, he uses the word abhorrent. That's the same as the word abomination. So in other words, the Bible says that homosexual behavior is an abomination. Cheating in business is an abomination. Haughty eyes is an abomination. A lot of things are an abomination in the scriptures, including homosexual behavior and pride and cheating in business. Now, he's using the same word to describe lying. It is an abomination, just like homosexual behavior. And he says, look, if President Obama is lying to us, this is an abhorrent act in a democracy. Now, catch this next paragraph. But just as it is utterly absurd to claim Director of National Intelligence James Clapper didn't lie before Congress, that's when he said, oh, no, we're not tracking any reporters. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff. If any of that stuff's kind of happened, that's totally inadvertent. Now we know that was a complete bald-faced lie. He said it's absurd to claim that James Clapper didn't lie. It has now become almost silly to insinuate or assume that the president hasn't also been lying. Why? Because if that's true, if indeed he hasn't been deliberately lying, then it means he has been dangerously, irresponsibly, and negligently ignorant of not only the government he runs, but also of the news breaking around him. So David Sirota says, in essence, look, there are only two options here. He is either evil or he is incompetent. He is either lying, which is morally abhorrent in a democratic society, or he is so inept and so incompetent and so clueless, he has no right to be in the highest office in the land. So here he goes on. So sure, I guess it's possible Obama has merely been wrong, but has not been lying. But the implications of that would be just as bad, albeit in a different way, as if he were deliberately lying. It would mean that he is making sweeping and wildly inaccurate statements without bothering to find out if they are actually true. Worse, for him merely to be wrong but not deliberately lying, it would mean that he didn't know the most basic facts about how his own administration runs. It would, in other words, mean that he is so totally out of the loop on absolutely everything, even the public news cycle, that he has no idea what's going on. And Sirota says, look, I don't buy that. I don't buy the clueless, inept, incompetent explanation. On top of that, so he says, look, he's just lying to us. This is morally abhorrent. It's evil. On top of that, he has a motive. Yes, Obama has an obvious political interest in trying to hide as much of his administration's potentially illegal behavior as possible, which means he has an incentive to calculatedly lie. For all of these reasons, it seems safe to suggest that when it comes to the NSA situation, the president seems to be lying. So he comes right out and uses the L word. Now, by the way, I've got a story here about the millennial generation abandoning liberalism. This is from Breitbart.com, talking about the fact that the millennials are not as locked into liberalism as everybody thinks. You know, you've got Republicans out there, oh, we can't do abortion because the millennials want abortion. We can't talk about a natural marriage because the millennials want same-sex marriage. We can't talk about these social issues because we'll turn off the millennials. Well, Breitbart.com, Chris Street saying, look, they are drifting from liberalism as we speak. Support for Obama has fallen by 9% since Election Day, but it is the 15% collapse in support by millennials that is driving Obama's fall. Furthermore, first-year college students self-identifying as liberals. I want you to think about this. I want you to make a guess in your own head. How many college freshmen do you think would self-identify as liberals? Now, if you were to ask me that question, I mean, the number that popped into my head, 70%. I would have said 70% of college freshmen self-identify as liberals, and Chris Street says no. It's only 26.4% for men and 32.4% for women, and that number's down 5% from where it was a year ago. And so support among millennials for Obama, they voted for him in 2012, the 18 to 29-year-olds, 61% of them voted for Obama, but now only 46% approve of his job as president. Less than half of the millennials approve of the job that he's doing as president. And it may be a lot of these people work for places like Forever 21. That's kind of a youth-oriented kind of clothing store. And they just announced yesterday we're cutting everybody back to 29 and a half hours. Nobody's going to be working full-time except for management because of Obamacare. We're just not going to be able to afford it, so everybody's getting slashed back to 29 and a half hours. So millennials are feeling the pinch from Obama, and they're starting to wake up. Let's grab a call from Samuel in Carthage, North Carolina. Samuel, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Yes, I appreciate your program, and I wanted to ask you about immigration. What do you think about illegals coming into our country when they've been persecuted or, if they've been oppressed in their former country? What do you think should be done with them? And I'll hang up and listen to your
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's a very, very good question. And he's really asking a question about asylum and about refugees. And here's my bottom line. America is a Christian nation, and we should have a very generous and open-handed asylum policy for Christians who want to seek refuge in America from persecution in their homeland. What's going on in Egypt right now? They are torching Christian churches. They are parading nuns through the street. You probably saw this. They're actually parading nuns through the streets as prisoners of war. I mean, Islam is at war with Christ. Islam is at war with Christians. Islam is at war with Christianity. And you have all these Muslim countries in the world where it's now a crime to convert to, well, not now, it always has been a crime to convert to Christianity. Their lives are in danger. We know about this pastor from my hometown of Boise is rotting away in some Iranian prison. He's got internal bleeding, stomach problems, can't get medical help. We ought to have a very generous and open-handed asylum policy for Christians who are being persecuted in these foreign countries. You think about what happened in Iraq, where the church actually had protection under Saddam. Christians have less protection now that America's gone in. They're a Christian nation. Christians have less protection in Iraq than they did under Saddam. Saddam protected the church in Iraq because Christians were the only public servants he could find who wouldn't try to rob him blind. They were the only trustworthy, honest, ethical people he could find to help him manage his government. So purely for self-interest, he tried to protect the Christians and Christian churches at least in the capital city. Well, all that's gone now, and a third of Christians have left the country. Where'd they go? They went to Syria, where now they're in danger for their lives. I mean, it's as bad in Syria as it is in Egypt, and so now they're filtering back into Iraq. So the very Christians that had to leave Iraq because of what was going on in Iraq and went to Syria to try to find some kind of protection because Assad did the same thing there. Assad provided some protection for Christians. That's why the Christian church, you ask them in Syria, do you prefer Assad, as brutal a dictator as he is, to these Muslim Brotherhood types that want to take over the country? They will tell you, we'll take Assad any day of the week. Well, Assad's in danger, going to be toppled, maybe. And so now these Christians are fleeing to Iraq. And I say, look, as a Christian nation, let's open our doors to persecuted Christians in these countries. Here's where the poor, tired, huddled masses things come into place. Let's make them a home here. This is a Christian nation. Here their values will be respected. Their ability to exercise their Christian faith is going to be protected. It's going to be honored. We're going to approve of it. We're going to support of it. They don't have to worry about having their heads cut off because they are followers of Jesus Christ. They can meet openly and worship Christ. That's what we ought to do. So I think we ought to have a genuine policy, particularly toward Christians who are persecuted in their own countries. And I got a story here. You know, we've had all the story about these illegals claiming asylum on the southern border because they're fearing cartels. Now, the First Circuit Court of Appeals is sending a Chinese Christian back to China, saying you don't get to stay even though your life may be at risk back in China. You don't get asylum here. Back in 2.